Hi, I'm Paul Sullenberger with Ceramic Speed. Today we're going to cover the basics of maintaining the Ceramic Speed Oversized Pulley Wheel System and bottom bracket found on your Ventum. Starting with the Oversized Pulley Wheel System, we're going to take a look at the pulley wheels and make sure they're lubricated and running smoothly. To do so, you want to use the included Ceramic Speed Pulley Wheel Oil. And each time you lube your chain, it's good practice to utilize the lube ports on the back of the cage and just to put a few drops in. This can be done with the wheel on the bike by reaching through and placing the back of the lube port onto the cage. Turn the system to get the oil to seep in, and you're good to go. You also want to take this time to check for any excess lateral movement. There should be just a little bit at the bottom with no ticking, clicking, or large spaces of movement. Everything looks pretty good on the system. Next, we're going to move to doing the bottom bracket service and removing the cranks. On a Shimano's crank, you're going to have a 5mm pair of bolts locking the non-drive side crank arm onto the spindle. Loosen each bolt a couple turns. And then remove the plastic retention bolt from the end. Set the tool and the bolt aside. In the sleeve between the bolts, there is a little plastic piece that locks the crank arm. Use a pointed object to remove that from the locking pin and slide the crank off. We will now slide the crank off the drive side. Careful to not let any plastic spacers fall to the ground from the non-drive side, and set aside. Visually inspect for any dirty grease, anything extra that may look contaminated. You want to feel the bearings with our finger to make sure they're feeling smooth. Any grinding or bearing drag is a sign that the bottom bracket may need further service. Now we'll use our screwdriver to remove the plastic dust cover. After you've carefully removed this and slid it out, set it aside for cleaning. And with a fine point, such as a knife or special tool, we're going to remove the face bearing seal, starting from the inner edge. Careful not to bend or deform the seal, and set aside. We'll now examine the grease level in the bearing, again feeling for smoothness and checking the condition of the bearing. If the grease is contaminated or dirty, we will want to flush with a proper degreaser and reapply new grease. Otherwise, a slight bit of new grease applied to the face will help keep things running smooth. This should be done every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. We recommend only using Ceramic Speed's all-round grease for general application and our TT grease for race day. Our long life grease for poor conditions or winter training. Now we will carefully reapply the face seal onto the bearing, gently using your fingers on the face and smoothing around. Check to feel everything is running smooth. We can reapply the plastic dust cover to the front. Making sure everything's running smooth again. Once completed on the drive side of the bottom bracket, repeat the same process on the non-drive side. With a quick wipe down of the crank, we will put just a little bit of grease on the spindle and reinstall the crank. This can be standard grease or Ceramic Speed all-around grease. Careful to line your chain back up on the inner chain ring to hold it out of the way. We will now reapply the spacer on the non-drive side and place the non-drive side crank back in proper alignment onto the spindle. Check to make sure that your lateral tension bolt is clean. Apply a little grease if needed, and thread back in. You do not need to over tighten the lateral bolt. This is a good time that you can test how freely the crank spins. By removing the chain from the chain rings, you can check how free the crank and bottom bracket rotate. Give the crank a spin, and you should have free spinning motion from the bottom bracket. With no side-to-side or lateral play, you're now ready to tighten both crank pinch bolts back into place, and you'll be done. Please refer to Shimano's torque specs for the crank bolts. Once you have properly torqued the non-drive side crank, you have now completed your bottom bracket service on your Ventum bike. You're now ready to go ride many more miles of fun.